Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Marissa Waterman, and I'm the Marketing Director here at AAEES. We're happy to be here today with Rick Watson from Delaware Solid Waste Authority. Rick is a board-certified environmental engineer and is the Chief Executive Officer of the Delaware Solid Waste Authority. It's a position he's held since 2014. Delaware Solid Waste Authority provides solid waste management services for the entire state of Delaware through the use of public and private partnerships. These services include 3 landfills, 3 transfer stations, 2 material recovery facilities, 7 drop-off centers, several recycling programs, and an environmental education center. Today, Rick will be discussing Delaware's unique approach to statewide recycling. Before we get started, I just want to mention that you'll be able to message your questions at the end of the presentation. Once the presentation's over, you'll be able to type your question into the attendee chat panel on the left-hand side of your screen. We'll also share Rick's email address so you can email him directly with additional questions you might have. Okay, let's get started. Good afternoon, Rick. Thank you for joining us today, and we're ready when you are.
Oh, hello, Marissa. Thank you for the introduction. And thank you to Dr. Abram for supporting this webinar. Really appreciate it. And let me see if I can get my file up here. There we go. And get it large. There we go. Okay, as Marissa described, Delaware Solid Waste Authority has what we think is a unique approach to our statewide recycling system. And we've got the opportunity here to share that with everyone because we like to boast a little bit, of course. And we think we have a really good system, which is different than many others. So let's get on with the presentation. First, a little bit about the authority. It was created in 1975 by the Delaware General Assembly, and they were considered a state entity. But we're not a state agency. We're independent in that we support ourselves financially. So there's no tax dollars that are used for our operations. We are consisted of a 7-member board of directors. Each of those persons serve a 3-year term. They're appointed by our governor and confirmed by our state senate. And in the Delaware Code, even though we're this entity for responsibility for solid waste in the entire state, they want us as an organization to be encouraging private industry to be utilized to the maximum extent feasible. Unlike some other Delaware agencies, again, we're to be lean and mean, if you will, and that's one of our goals. A little bit about Delaware itself. We're fortunate to be small. We do have a population that's approaching 1 million. It's been increasing steadily in each year. But currently our 2020 census shows that we're at 990,000 people. As you can see, we've got several sites throughout the state, pretty well distributed between the north and the south. And we have 3 counties. The northern county, Newcastle County, is the most urban in the state. And then as you move down the state, it gets more rural. Kent County in the center, where the Dover Administrative Office and the state offices are located. And Sussex County, where we are near, we have a big retirement community, and we also have a big, beautiful beach area, which shows a big increase in the summertime. And I'm going to go over a little bit of our recycling history, but I'm not going to go all the way back to 1975. I'm going to start in 1990 because we don't have enough time for all that. So in 1990, we started what we call the Recycled Delaware program. And basically, it's a drop-off program, voluntary. We had 185 locations statewide, and it's source-separated bins where people came and dropped off their recyclables at no charge, and they're pretty much unmanned. And in that system, when we started in 1990, we increased, like I say, to the 185 locations over several years. And we collected on average about 1,500 tons of recyclables per month. And it was a partnership situation, which again was one of our goals. And partnership in that the transportation of the materials from the drop-off centers to our baling center was through an RFP process, and a private entity did the transportation part. And also a partnership in the sense that drop-off center locations, picture this, 185 different places, and it was, of course, the authority didn't have that many locations, so we had to partner with schools and private offices and government buildings, and had to have agreements for all those individual locations. And as a result, by the end of the 1990s, we were collecting about 20,000 tons of recyclables, source separated on a yearly basis. And this is what it looked like. A typical office parking lot where you had all the different containers, one for each different type of material, whether it was cans or plastic bottles or paper or cardboard. And then we had 3 separate containers for glass. You can see brown, green, and clear. And again, there's a variety of partnerships, whether it's governments or private offices or retail stores like Walmart's. Although that system did collect a lot, 20,000 tons is a pretty good amount of material. It had the benefit of being within 5 miles or less for every resident in the state. So it was very comprehensive for the entire state. We could only achieve 20,000 tons a year, which was not as much as we would have liked to be doing. And it did have some problems with occasional theft of recyclables from unstaffed sites. And we also had trash left at unstaffed sites. People would leave mattresses and other trash at our sites, and we had to physically clean it up at our expense. And then there was a pretty high cost of transporting all these different materials from the sites to our baling facility, which was located in northern Delaware. So as part of that, during that time in the late 90s, there was a demand. Many people were requesting the convenience of curbside recycling, and then some were willing to pay a small fee for it. Solid waste hauling companies at that time, nor the municipalities, were willing to provide this service. Again, because it was an extra expense, and they felt that people wouldn't be willing to pay the extra expense for the true cost. But in addition to just collecting, you need to have a place to sort and bale and market. And for a company to take the risk to establish that entire stream of processing and baling facilities is quite a capital expense with a lot of risk. So in response, we decided that we would go into the collection business ourselves in 2003 to meet this demand, and hopefully that would put pressure on the haulers to do the same. Again, our intention at the time was not to really get into the collection business on a long-term basis. It was really to pressure haulers to do that and get us out of that area of business. So when we started our curbside collection system in 2003, it was a bin and bag system, and it was source separated. So our drop-off system prior to that had been a source separated system, like I showed the individual separate bins. So we carried that theme into our curbside, and we decided to have bags and 18-gallon blue bin. And we would have multi-compartment trucks, which would keep all those materials separate. And we decided to charge a minimal fee of $6 per month per household for a biweekly pickup of those materials. And of course, it was voluntary, and we have no location restrictions. So we targeted certain areas in the northern Delaware first, and then spread southward throughout the rest of the state at the time. But again, we were making routes just based upon people calling us up and saying we want to have curbside collection. So here's a picture of the system. There's our blue bin, and there's the bags where the materials were kept separate, and cardboard and glass were put into the bins also. And there's a picture of one of our multi-compartment collection trucks, as you can see. So, and as you can also see, it was a very manual system where the person driving the truck had to also manually pick up the materials and put them in the separate bins on the truck. So then we had to identify some of the weaknesses of that system, and it was very expensive to operate for several reasons. One was the cost of the bags. We'd provide our customers bags, but every so often they'd run out. We get calls, hey, I need some more bags, and had to deliver to them. We had inefficient routes. Like I said earlier, the routes were just determined by people calling and saying, I want pickup. And we pretty much accommodated anyone who wanted to have the collection. So you'd have a neighborhood where you might have one or two houses that were willing to pay our $6 fee. And we would go and drive many, many miles to go in between customers. The compartments on the trucks filled unevenly. As you saw, the compartments, let's say for metal cans, might be full, where the other compartments for the other materials might be half full. And you'd have to go and drive the truck to the processing center prematurely, if you will. And as I point out too, it was also labor intensive. You had to be concerned about the person's motions and strain on their backs and stuff like that. And it was a long haul to our processing facility, which is located in the northern part of the state. The fee, that $6 fee that we charged to the customers, really did not cover our true costs. And because of those excessive costs, we had to look into going with another type of system. And finally, the other solid waste haulers didn't provide that sort of level of service that we had. And so we were the only ones providing that type of service. And that was a challenge. So then we decided in 2007 to convert over to a single stream system, where instead of having the bags and individual compartments, we decided to give out 35, 65, or 95 gallon carts to our customers, where they would just put all their materials in the same cart. And we transferred over to rear load collection trucks with tippers, so that that helped with the lesser labor issues with combined with the less concern about their health. We had a similar charge of $2 to $6 per month per household per pickup biweekly, and the deal was the $6 per month was for the subscription person out in unincorporated areas. The $2 fee was what we established if we could get a commitment from a municipality to do all of the houses in the municipality. So therefore, having a much better efficient system. Again, it was voluntary sign up, and like I said before, we had no location restrictions either. So here's this photo of the system. Like you can see, the tipper system on a rear load truck really prevented issues with our employees there. And it's a nice, neat container. And again, we size the container based upon the customer's needs. And in some municipalities, they felt that 35-gallon cart was what they needed, and that's what we provided. And again, there was no charge for the container itself. It was all included in our $2 or $6 per month fee. So this system had its strengths and weaknesses. The strengths were the improved efficiency, reduced cost versus the source separation system. The carts worked out very much better than the bags, less labor intensive, and we had more efficient rear load trucks, which could haul more tons per truckload. And this did ultimately inspire some municipalities and some haulers to do the same. And the weaknesses, though, was our small fees still required a significant subsidy. We had a large capital investments in all these trucks and carts. We had a long haul for trucks to our transfer stations, but not as long as the haul that was going from the southern part of the state to the northern part of our state. And by 2007, the authority built 2 new transfer stations in the middle part of the state in Milford, and in the southern part of the state in Harbison. And those handle both recyclables and solid waste transfer. So that definitely helped for the recyclables situation. And the mixture was marketed to out-of-state processors. So all this material that we collected single stream, now we just marketed that mixture to out-of-state processors. We didn't have any processors in state. And again, this was still voluntary fee-based system, and it ended up by 2010 serving about 22% of the total households, which was an improvement over what we had before, but still not what we really wanted. So here's a table that shows what we had. A total of 22% because we had 347,000 households, and of those, our curbside had 76,000 tons, or I'm sorry, 76,000 households. When you split it up, municipal was roughly 51,000 of that, and the individual subscription in unincorporated areas was about 25,000. So if you look at that, so DSWA was collecting for all these households, about 50,000 of those households out of the 76,000. So we were getting to be a pretty large collector. And again, like I said earlier, our intention was not to be a large collector in the long term. We wanted to be just the receiver of materials and not the collector. So to overcome that and to come up with a better system, Delaware legislators came up with an idea that was a win-win-win for the authority, for the collectors, and for all of our customers. What we had was what's called a universal recycling law, which came into being in 2010 with 3 separate deadlines. The first part, by September 15th of 2011, DSWA was to cease all of our curbside recycling collection so that the private sector and municipalities could take over that. In addition, the solid waste haulers, anyone who is a licensed hauler that provided solid waste collection, was to also provide curbside collection to all single-family residential customers by that September 11th date. In addition, they were to provide adequately sized carts to be collected at least every other week, and they were going to provide a combined bill for waste and recycling service. That's something that the waste collectors wanted. They didn't want to have to break out a separate breakdown of how much recycling costs versus how much collection and disposal of waste costs. So also the single stream includes the following materials. Under fiber, it was paper and cardboard. and under containers it was plastic, glass, and metal. And so that is what we are required by law in Delaware to collect. So then the next deadline was January 1st of 2013, where solid waste haulers at that point in time were supposed to provide curbside recycling services to all multifamily complexes. And then the last deadline was January 1st of 2014, where all commercial businesses must actively participate in a comprehensive recycling program. That was a wide definition, which gave the necessary flexibility for the different types of businesses to that generate different recyclable materials to come up with their plan and participation in recycling. So, like if you're a bar or a restaurant and you might have a lot of cardboard and glass and metal, then you develop your program to have those materials collected. And that's what got enacted and successfully. So the universal law is universal in that all waste haulers must provide the curbside recycling services. So that provided a level playing field. If you're a hauler, you didn't have any advantage or disadvantage with other haulers because you all had to do the same thing. And our Department of Natural Resources and Environmental Control enforces this hauler requirement. And there's, under the universal law, there's no mandatory enforcement on homeowners. So in Delaware, you don't have the issue of the recycling police knocking on homeowners' doors and all the issues associated with that. So the homeowners receive the service automatically, whether they really want it or not. They're ending up paying for that combined waste and recycling fee, and as long as you're paying the fee, you might as well participate. So here's a little summary where the recycling law was signed in 2010, and like I said, mandated for waste haulers to provide single stream recycling pickup. And so you have the pickup, now all this material's got to go somewhere. So we were in need of having a processing facility because there wasn't one in the state of Delaware. And rather than transport it way out of state, this provided the assurance that a processing facility, if located in Delaware, was going to receive a substantial amount of material to make it worthwhile for an investment. So we developed an RFP for a 20-year term contract that would repurpose an existing DSWA recycling campus that we had that was idle in Newcastle County. And the result was we had several proposals, and the best one, in our opinion, came from a company called Recommunity, who has since been bought out by, and they responded by providing a state-of-the-art material recovery facility, which is MRF. And we liked them because that was their only business. They were only processors and marketers of materials. They were not in the collection business, so they would not compete, if you will, with the collection haulers. And so that was one of the main reasons we selected them. So it ended up, they put in $15 million of their own money to build this system in one of the authority's empty buildings, which provided 90 new Delaware jobs. We had a 20-year contractual commitment. And again, it's a processing facility that serves the entire state. And this is what it looked like when it was built in 2013. And very good use of a building that we had no use for at the time. Then along with that, on that same site, we had an administrative building that was pretty much idle, and we decided to repurpose it into an education building. And what that consisted of was a partnership with the recycling community company there. They could put in displays. We invested $600,000 to refurbish the building, and it's a LEED certified building on top of that. And we target the audience for school children in the K to 5 area, and we provided them with a field trip experience in this building. And we had an education partnership, like I say, with the recycling company, who is now Republic, the Call to Recycle people who do batteries, the Carton Council, and Revolution Recovery, who's a construction and demolition recycling, who's also on our site, this same site. As part of the legislation establishing the universal recycling law, there was a phase out of our bottle bill. Delaware had a bottle bill that was established in the early 80s, and they thought that it would be good to get rid of the bottle bill because it might take revenue away from our single stream recycling system. That was a judgment call. Again, and what happened was in December 20th of 2010, a 5-cent refundable deposit on soda and beer bottles ended, and it was replaced with a 4-cent non-refundable fee on those same bottles. The stores would pay into the State of Delaware Recycling Fund to help purchase carts and equipment that is like recycling trucks, anything recycling on the collection side. But and it's very important, that 4-cent non-refundable fee was to end in December 2014, and believe it or not, they actually did end it. And the money was established, and a separate group, the Recycling Public Advisory Group, was created along with DENREC to determine who would be granted their requests for funding for purchasing the carts and the equipment. And that system worked very well. It did what was intended to do. Also, just as a point, the Delaware Solid Waste Authority had set up 50,000 customers. Those 50,000 customers had Delaware Solid Waste Authority recycling carts already, which we basically donated to this new program. So a lot of people already had carts that were provided by the authority. And again, the purpose of it for those that enacted it was to help direct bottle revenue to single stream recycling. So the material recovery facility logistics, the reason I bring that up is before the legislation was created, there was pressure on the authority to build a MRF on our own, to actually put in the money for it, own it, operate it. And the thought for many people at the time was that, well, if you build a MRF, people will come to it and bring materials to it. Well, that's not necessarily true, what we felt at the time, because there's an existing market competition for recycled materials. Wouldn't necessarily come to our facility because you'd have to compete with others. And you don't know what the future of recyclable revenues is going to be either. So that is one of the reasons we decided to go with a private partnership where we'd have the private entities take the risk, and they also have a bigger market. Delaware Solid Waste Authority is focused on Delaware materials, whereas a private entity could focus on bringing in regional materials if it made sense. So another thing that we decided to do was have what we call a discount disposal fee contract. So in Delaware, all the solid waste haulers that are hauling material generated in Delaware need to come to DSWA facilities. And we have a system of belt and suspenders, if you will, that by our regulation, they're required to come to us. And also, we establish contracts where if they agree to sign a contract with us, that they will actually bring all their Delaware waste and recycling to DSWA, they will get a discount, which is a large discount, in their waste tip fee, which we will pay in 2 rebates per year. And if they commit that, yes, they will bring all the materials to Delaware DSWA, they receive a 0 tip fee for single stream recyclables brought to the MRF through our partnership with Republic. It's a huge incentive for them to bring material to us, including the recycling. And again, the penalty would be if we find that they were to take their solid waste out of state somewhere, they wouldn't get their rebate, which is a large amount of money, and that really discourages something like that from happening. So the results were that we had a brand new MRF in 2013 that was large enough to handle all of Delaware's single stream recyclables, plus some from out of state. Again, since this is operated by a private entity, they are allowed to bring out of state recyclables to this facility. The DSWA leases the site and our buildings to Republic Services now. So we have revenue from that. The DSWA controls, operates, and charges Republic Services a fee for the scale operation. So again, since the fees are based on tons and you have to weigh tons in and out, it's important for DSWA to control that. So we have our existing scale system and scale operators, and we would charge our cost, small fee for that operation. Republic owns and operates the MRF equipment. So they have to deal with all the issues about maintenance and the labor that necessary to properly operate that equipment. DSWA and a third-party contractor now will be auditing the contamination rates and fees. This was important that we have a third party do this now that Republic is the owner-operator of the MRF, because it's awkward for Republic to make a determination that one of their competitors brought a contaminated load, and therefore Republic's going to charge a certain fee to their competitor. The more fair way is going to be for us to have a third-party audit what the contamination rate is, and a standard fee for a certain amount of contamination is established that all haulers evenly will be applied to. All Delaware collectors are charged $0 for clean single stream recyclables, which by definition is 15% or less contamination. DSWA provides 2 transfer stations in southern Delaware to transfer recyclables north to the MRF. And for self-haulers, DSWA provides 13 drop-off locations at no cost. So that system that I described earlier of 185 drop-off locations, as single stream came on board, we reduced the number of drop-off sites in a stepwise fashion until we only had 13 left, and all 13 are manned, so that there's no issues with trash being left at unmanned sites. And then lastly, all residents and businesses have access to single stream recycling. So no matter where you are in the state, if you have garbage collection service, you've got recycling. If you don't, if you haul your own waste, where you haul your waste to has a recycling drop-off center for you. And that yields 100,000 tons per year of Delaware single stream recycling material. And here's a summary of how the breakout is of the household served by refuse and recycling collection. And again, this is recent data of 2020, where you see the total number of households is 359,538. That's an increase in households from the previous slide I showed because of the increase in population here. So of that 359,000 households, the majority, 62%, is subscription curbside service. So that's in Delaware, the majority of our households have to shop around, if you will, for a hauler to haul their waste and recyclables. And on the municipal side, we have a couple of big municipalities that do their own, and that's 21%. And then there's other municipal contracts at another 11%. And then lastly, there's the self-haulers that can drop off at the collection stations or directly at our landfills or transfer stations. And total, that amounts to about 6% of people that self-haul in the state of Delaware. So in addition to single stream recycling, DSWA provides free services for these other materials: electronics, batteries, oil and oil filters, polystyrene foam, and HHW, household hazardous waste. And on the electronics recycling side, we provide a system where you can drop off electronics and special Saturday collections. And here's a list for the year 2020, where we were going to have 14 events. We had to cancel a few events in March and April of last year due to COVID. But even with that, we were able to resume back in May, and we collected a total of 207,389 pounds of electronic goods. And our electronics are very comprehensive. We collect basically anything that has a cord. So it's not just computers and laptops and phones. We collect a lot of appliances too. So the breakout in this also shows just the number of materials collected. Some of them, you can see televisions are a big one. And then in addition to our Saturday events, we have weekly collection at several of our facilities. And then we have collection that we arrange for government offices, for nonprofits, and for schools. And as you can see, that adds up to a pretty significant amount of material. This 2.4 million pounds of material collected. And we're open with our books, and we show that what our expense was for that was $649,000. And battery recycling. We are in a partnership with Call to Recycle, and which includes all types, not just rechargeable, but non-rechargeables, as is shown in the picture. And we've collected over 116,000 pounds in a year, and Delaware ranks number 2 in pound per population of batteries that are collected. This has been a fantastic relationship we've had with Call to Recycle. They initially focused on rechargeables, and we persuaded them to allow us to add the non-rechargeables, and it's been a success. Again, it's something that we do at MRFs and transfer stations, are being protected from fire hazards or the lithium batteries are a special risk that we are concerned about. And this program provides a safe alternative for people that really want to recycle as much material as they can. And then this does it in a safe way. We have oil and oil filter recycling. And here we have a partnership with Heritage Crystal Clean. As you can see in the picture, we have our containers, drop-off containers for oil and oil filters, and the collection service, they come. And this program helps keep the oil landfills and sewers and storm drains. And last year we had 477 tons of motor oil recycled and 13 filters also. And then we have a unique polystyrene foam recycling system. we have a partnership with Dark Container. Dark Container has a manufacturing plant. We're fortunate near just over the line in Pennsylvania, and we have 4 drop-off locations, like the one shown in this picture here, where a person can bring clean styrofoam, and we have manned sites so we can monitor and make sure people are putting in clean material. And then a box truck that DART provides comes down to these sites and picks up the bags as you see them and drives them back up to Pennsylvania where they're recycled. And our house program, which we've been running for about 30 years now. This is where, again, we have special Saturday collection events, the same events where you can drop off electronic goods too. And the past year, you can see the events that we had. We collected 230,000 pounds of HHW materials for a cost of $282,000. And again, the events are located throughout the state, and we, on purpose, try to make it representative of. And then in addition to those individual events, we have a regular weekly collection drop-off at our sites, and 1 day a week at each of the sites that are shown here. Recycling Center site, the Cheswold site, and the Jones Crossroads landfill. The photo of the Jones Crossroads landfill site on a typical collection day. Again, it's 1 day a week at each of these sites, and we collect a pretty good amount, 1,000 pounds collected there. It's not cheap. It's $1.4 million that we provide that program for, and again, there's no charge. It's part of our solid waste feed support system. And then kind of go review the advantages and disadvantages of being a state that now no longer has a bottle bill. Well, so the advantage to that, well, you don't have to pay a deposit. And for the Delaware situation anyways, now there's more bottles that are actually recycled than before. And then there's a continuous collection during the COVID-19 pandemic versus some bottle bill states where their redemption centers were closing. Here, the bottles will continue to be collected during that time as part of the curbside service or a drop-off service. That never ended during the pandemic. And then it's convenience for the consumers and for the retail stores. Again, our system is right at the curb. You don't have to go anywhere. Just drop it in your cart and it gets recycled. And the stores don't have to set aside space for the collection of the bottles. So it's their advantage too. But there are some disadvantages. And the biggest one, of course, is that DSWA subsidizes the cost of the material recovery facility, and therefore the consumer ends up paying in the back end instead of deposit front end. And the bottles aren't as clean because they're mixed with other materials. And when they're processed in the MRF, the glass bottles break and they yield a lower price cullet, and they can contaminate some of the other recyclables. Those are not small issues. They can be big issues. So the expense of processing them is definitely higher. Their market value is lower, but they still can be fully recycled. Also, Delaware is a state that doesn't have any extended producer responsibility laws. And then I just have an example here specifically for electronics. Extended producer responsibility is just what it sounds like. It's the company that manufactures a product is held responsible for its ultimate end of life use. and there are several states that have implemented laws specifically regarding electronics. Delaware is not one of those. So the advantages of this no EPR for electronics is that we have a wider range of electronics. As I said earlier, we take almost everything with a cord, whereas EPR laws, many of them target only specific electronics and have a limit of the materials that they will take. Again, our system is convenient and free to residents statewide, and our system is convenient and free to government, the NGOs, and the schools. There's no upfront fee added to purchase of the item in our state. Our DSWA program and administrative costs are much lower than an EPR system administrative cost. And that DSWA solicits for the most qualified and fair cost vendor. So again, our qualification requirement is very strict. There's a disadvantages of no EPRs also. The DSWA bears the cost of the program, and the consumer ends up paying it on the back end. All Delaware residents and businesses, since they generate solid waste, pay a DSWA tipping fee, which in turn funds the fraction of people taking advantage of our free system, and that's a disadvantage of our system, if you will. And regarding single stream recycling system that we have, our advantages: all the residents and businesses have single stream recycling, and the ones that don't have solid waste collection and are doing their own disposal, well, they have access to our drop-off systems too. There was a substantial increase in our recycling rate when we implemented this statewide. And there's a new, modern, privately owned and operated MRF that's built and controlled, and it's controlled by DSWA through a contract. And this, again, meets our mission to use private industry where it makes sense. DSWA was able to get out of an unsustainable, inefficient collection business. So that saved us a substantial amount of money by having to get out of the collection side of things. Other advantage is that all collectors pay the same discount disposal fee. Republic Services has better marketing leverage than DSWA. If we were to own and operate the MRF, we could do a good job, but Republic, being the second largest hauler and MRF operator in the country, has a lot more leverage and ability to market the materials than we would. DSWA has an existing recycling site that was underutilized and that was able to be repurposed for a better use. And disadvantages: DSWA subsidizes the MRF operation as needed to buffer the ups and downs of the recycling markets. In our contract with Republic, we take away a lot of the risk that's due to recycling markets, and we believe it's a fair way to contract with them. We also subsidize the cost to transfer recyclables from our 2 southern transfer stations. Again, there's a cost with that, and we bear that cost. So that's our presentation, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask them, and my phone number and email address are shown on the screen. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Rick. Now we're going to open it up for questions. So if you have a question, just type it in on the left-hand side of your screen where it says attendee chat. And Rick, you can just answer as many as you can, go as at your own pace.
Okay.
And we'll also have, well, actually, you already have the email address up. So if anyone wants to email Rick questions as well. So I think I saw the first question. Let's see. Okay, so the first question is actually in a different spot. It's up top. There's a little speech bubble there. It says, could you explain how Republic is paid for processing and there is a zero tip fee when the markets don't cover costs? Is there a zero tip fee when the markets don't cover costs?
Right. Okay. Yeah, the contract with Republic is pretty complex, but try to simplify it. The Republic charges a fee to operate their system. It's basically currently going to be $92.50 a ton for them to provide the labor and the equipment to just move the material through their system to sort it and bale it. And then there's the marketing part of it, where the average commodity revenue number is determined. And so what you do is all their marketing information regarding they sold aluminum, certain number of tons for a certain price, plus they sold the paper for a certain number of tons, certain price. They got the glass to a market at a negative price. They got some residue that had to be landfilled at a certain price. Taking all those costs and revenues together, you come up with the average commodity revenue. So when the average commodity revenue in that example is less than their processing charge, so if it's $80 a ton versus the $92.50, well, there's that differential that needs to be made up. And then likewise, if the average commodity revenue is over the $92.50, if it's $100, well, that revenue is comes to in a share with the authority. So that's the high level answer to that question.
Okay, and then you can, if you go to attendee chat on the left-hand side, you can see the other questions and you can just answer them as you go along.
Okay, attendee on the left side?
Yes. It's where the attendee list was. There's attendee chat.
Yeah, I see the list. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I can read the next question to you.
Yeah, if you would read them,
Sure. What do you think of dual stream recycling success rate instead of single stream at DSWA?
Yes, that's a controversial topic too. Dual stream definitely has advantages in keeping, especially keeping the glass portion out of the paper portion, and in some instances that's a real issue. But then it's you need the separate collection. So processing wise, it's probably an advantage, but the collection side, you need separate collection of the two streams. So then you have to look at the bigger picture. Does it make sense to do that in a bigger picture? So we just decided at the time that single stream got you more material, and in our opinion, in total. And then that material found its markets, although you need to more difficult processing.
Okay. We have another question from NC. What's your estimate of per capita recycling pounds per year?
Thank you, NC. I knew you had to have something here. The measurements that we take. The thing is, I know that we've got roughly 100,000 tons that are processed, Delaware tons that are roughly processed through them. So you take that, divide by our population, you can get the number that way. And if you want to do it by household, numbers are like 2.7 people per household, and you could get a number per household that way. And then there's always the question about, well, gee, you got 100,000 tons of material that go into the MRF. but there's residue. So then you're not recycling residue. So it's recycling, 80,000 or 85,000 tons a year, not 100,000, because you got the portion of that that's residue.
Okay. Our next one is from Baba Musa. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. Plastic waste is a huge challenge, especially in developing economies where open dumping method is prevalent as means of solid waste disposal. Given engineer Richard's experience, what solution will be recommended for efficient handling of plastic wastes?
Yeah, very good question. Plastic that we collect is basically containers and multi-rigid plastics. The plastics that are a lot of plastics that are causing a problem are packaging materials, and in my opinion, there needs to be something on a national basis to deal with reducing packaging materials, which are mostly plastics, and finding other alternative for packaging that's recyclable and or actually just to reduce the amount of packaging. So I think that's really the way to go.
Okay, thank you, Rick. I don't see any more questions at the moment. Let's see. If anyone else has any questions, yes, go ahead.
I could also point out that if anyone wants information regarding our operations, please visit our website at DSWA.com. And we've got all kinds of reports and studies that we've done. We're proud to share what knowledge we have. We think we're doing very good. We always have room for improvement, and we like to share our information because we don't want people to have to reinvent the wheel when someone's already done something. And we like to study, and we love data. And I must compliment NC Vizuki for leading the way. He was my mentor, and we've learned a lot from him.
Great. Thank you so much, Rick. We appreciate it. And is it okay if anyone can email you if they have any other questions?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, great. So that's it for today. We're going to wrap up. Like I said, please email Rick with any questions if you'd like. And our next webinar is scheduled for July 14th, where DC Water will be discussing their Animox process application. The page to register for this webinar will open as soon as this session ends. You can register for that July 14th webinar as soon as this closes. And that's it for today. So everyone, thank you so much and have a great day.
Thank you.